and we're having a few technical difficulties. Started. So, in any event, I'm glad that you're able to tune in today. We have a lot of different things uh, going on today, and we cover a few of the issues. First, this week, many of you participated in a phone conference that I had with the general manager and a very important host and the TV superstar on Channel 8 for a long time. And we talked about the critical race theory. Many of you participated by phone, and we had really good discussions on the issues. So thank you all for calling in and supporting this important endeavor. This week, we had civil rights groups visit the White House, and they were involved in discussions about voting rights. We had really important demonstration by voter right group here in Indianapolis, Indiana, at the senator's office, Senator Braun and Senator Young, because there have been a proliferation of attacks to roll back voting laws. In essence, the new laws and legislation are based on the false evidence that somehow the last election was stolen from Trump, although he lost by 7.1 million votes, and Republicans won in down ballot on the same ballot that Trump was on, where voters cast votes. Some of the voters for Republican for Congress and Senate didn't vote for Trump for president. And they had a lot of reasons not to vote for him. The number one thing is that he had been impeached, and he got impeached the second time before he left office. Number two, we had a terrible pandemic last year, the worst in American history. The President of the United States said that it was a hoax, that it was over with by April. Then May, we saw a horrific amount of dead bodies accumulating at funeral homes, in refrigerated trucks, and it was just a terrible sight in America. America was under attack by the deadly virus. We needed help. We needed government intervention to properly manage the crisis. The government did not have a cohesive plan to deal with this terrible tragedy. Therefore, what occurred is that more people died from the pandemic than any disease process that I can recall during my lifetime. We depend on what studies that you paid attention to, the University of Washington or somebody reported. There's somewhere between 620 and 1.3 million people in America died because of the pandemic. And because of the pandemic, we're still dealing with this terrible tragedy. And we see now in places like LA and in the South, where they were slow to get the vaccination. And one of the lasting effects of this tragedy, the American tragedy, there's still many folks who are distrustful, who do not believe that the vaccine should be taken or that it works properly. Here's what I want you to look at. Folks, look at the evidence. At one time in America during the last year, I remember one day we had almost 5,000 folks in one day die because of the virus. It was 4719 or something. And I watched that in horror. All these people that were dying. And the only thing that saved us from this terrible American tragedy is that they started the vaccination process in December, in January. And I was so ecstatic to receive my vaccination at the first available opportunity. And I felt that it gave me a second chance at life. And because of that, I've been able to go to family outings, cookouts, bar retreats, and all the things that we took for granted before the pandemic. We still have a great deal of mistrust from taking vaccination. Now, here's my pitch today for all you folks who have some trepidation about taking vaccines. Here's what I want you to consider. Number one, the evidence before you illustrates a dramatic decrease in vaccination in our country. Because a lot of people stopped taking vaccination, we had a relative increase in the number of folks that are now receiving the coronavirus again. I believe that we must work hard to make sure that all our friends, our neighbors, are properly vaccinated. I think that this new threat that now gripping our country, we need to be more aggressive to protect our loved ones. So one of the things I tell all our clients, we have plexiglass in our office. We took all the protocols for the coronavirus last year, and we bought all the safety equipment. We bought masks. We bought the hand sanitizers. We bought the protective equipment. And we did all these things to protect our employees and our staff from being exposed to the virus. But the number one protection that we can have is everybody get properly vaccinated. And I think that's important for us to achieve. So when people are talking to you and they're saying they did not want to receive a vaccination, I want you to know that it's still important that we do. I want you to know that it's important to your friends and family that they get a modicum of protection. So that's my spiel today. And don't forget, this idea of vaccination has been around for over 70 years. You remember when you were growing up, some of you that were around in the 60s and 70s, before you went to school, you took all type of vaccination for smallpox, for measles, the mumps, you name it. So you had to show your shots before you went to school. And I had people come to my office and said that I don't know what's in this Moderna or in Pfizer. And I asked them, I said, when you took those shots all your life, did you ever know what was in those shots? I was curious. Nobody knew what was in the shots, but we knew one thing for certain, that people did not die because of those dreadful disease process. Scientists work on these products every day of our lives.
They do tests, they do studies, and based upon the scientific results, they have saved probably in excess of 1 million lives by now. Because if the vaccine had not intervened, that 5,000 folks per day were losing would escalate to 10,000, then to 20,000. We may have had a country where we could have probably lost at least 10% of the American population if we had not properly gained control. And then so these people that are trying to do voter restrictions in our country, they forget about the fact that we had the worst managed pandemic, the worst in American history. That by itself, this government malpractice, was sufficient evidence to vote for someone else in the last presidential election. You can't fake death. You can't fake illness. So whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Communist, Socialist, or otherwise, we all felt the pain, the suffering that was created by this dreadful disease process. So when civil rights leaders this week visited the White House, they were talking about voting rights. And so when the voting right occurred, the issue is that somehow the election was rigged. They were not. And because of that, we've had this onslaught of new voter restrictions in multiple states. And in our state, I was shocked at the presidential result. You know, I've been living here in Indiana for a long time, and I was shocked that 1.7 million people from Indiana voted for Trump. And because of that, I was deeply disturbed that so many people fell for a false narrative, a totally unfit individual to serve the nation's highest office. He brought disgrace. They kept track of the lies that the president was telling, and it was like 26, 27,000. I mean, it was incredible. It's almost every time he gave a speech, it was a lie. And one of the things that was most disturbing to me was the issue. Hold on.
The voting results. Okay, you can hear me okay. Go ahead, I could take the caller, but I'm having some technical difficulty. Go ahead, caller. You have a question for us today.
Yeah, you know, I'm really surprised that the Democrats are making a big mistake. They say that the people that voted for Trump, of course, are not taking the vaccine. Well, why don't they go ahead and not let them take the vaccine, and they don't have to worry about losing offices? I mean, when you really look at it, Nate, nobody can save your life, right? Nobody can do that. And we just got to remember that the pharmaceutical companies were under fire, and people were suing them and doing everything else to them for the opioid situation they created here in our country. Now they're walking on a velvet throne. So we have to think about how a consensus is built and they're trying to build a consensus for the vaccine right now. And I think that if you take the vaccine, personally, if you're not going to be affected by COVID, then you should leave it right there, because you can't save anybody's life. Only God can do that. So I think that you guys voted for Joe Biden. You look at him now, he's senile, he's crippled, and you've done this country a great disservice. And I think you're going to find out in the end that you picked the wrong man. But I wish you just leave Trump out of the picture, because there's nothing you can do to him.
I can't hear this call. I'm sorry.
Take our medicine and go on. Thanks, Nate.
Okay, sorry about that. I lost my sound and I couldn't hear the caller. At this time, we'll take a short commercial break. Thank you for calling in.
Vaughn Walmsley was a student at Indiana University.
Hello, Attorney Lee. So what's going on? Mr. Attorney Lee?
Yeah, he's having some difficulties on his end. I'm going to ask him to log out and log back in. Can you hear him?
I can hear him. It's just the beginning of the show. Mind you, we have 1:30, but I can add more commercials whatever time he needs until he's ready, but within the time frame. But beginning of the show was echoing, and I kept texting like, you might need to turn your radio down. And so I'm sure he's read that. And then it started to sound better as the show progressed. And then there's no audio. And I'm like, oh, okay, what's going on? And then there's a caller. You just heard Larry. So other than that, I mean, it was dead air. So I just want to make sure everything's okay.
Yeah, my computer, accidentally my sound would turn off. I just turned it back on, so now I can hear.
Okay.
All right. Okay,
all right,
good.
cool. We have actually 50 seconds left, and then just make sure, as usual, have your radio make sure it's not echoing. So
yeah, I just turned it off because I can hear the sound, but I was able to get my sound started out. I don't know why my sound was on mute on my computer, so I went to my laptop, so I'm okay now.
Okay, good. We got 30 seconds, all right?
Okay, thank
and
you.
I'll text you when you're live, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Family dysfunction.
Mama, can you pass me a turkey?
Which one?
And more Christmas cheer.
Do not go Scrooge on me. We need some Christmas cheer.
What could go wrong?
Christmas Day, and we almost get put in handcuffs.
Okay, now, as I was saying, we're back dealing with a adverse political climate when we have a situation that occurs in many of the legislators. A lot of the legislators now are attempting to pass laws that are simply bad for democracy. We went through this process back in the 60s, and then we fought civil rights laws and legislation, and now it's almost like we're fighting some of the same battles again. The so-called restriction on early voting. I saw where in the state of Georgia, some of the restrictions that they were trying to add to their voting rolls. And this is proliferation of these states that were close in the presidential election. So the irony of this aspect is that the states that Trump won, the Republicans have not sought to change voting laws. Like here in Indiana, they changed voter ID law, which was bad for Indiana. And since they changed the voter ID law here in this state, Republicans have won the governor's office every year. And they've got a super majority in the state legislature. And proportionally, the numbers just are not sound. So one of the things that we can glean from that, their efforts in our state to suppress Democratic voters has been successful, because we look at the results. I don't believe that 60% of the people in the state, for example, are Trump supporters. I just don't believe that. But I do think that the efforts in terms of voter suppression has had a disadvantage to the Democratic voter, particularly minority voters. So in order to overcome this problem, we have to be more vigilant. We have to vote early, and we have to be educated with the voter laws. But on top of that, one of the things that we have to do that's important is that it has to start in our home base. So when we have a situation where you have teenagers in your house and they turn 17, and if they are going to turn 18 before the next election, you need to take it upon yourself to make sure they go register to vote. As a parent, it's your civic duty to do that. And also, one of the things, even with my children who are adults now, young adults, highly educated, they don't receive their news like I did. I used to read the newspaper, 2 newspapers every day. I watched the news channel. I used to watch the local news, and then they got rid of Andrew Moorhead, so I really don't have local news to watch anymore. My favorite newscasts are all gone. So I try to watch CNN, and I read the local newspaper, the Star, and of course I have the news feed on the internet. Well, my highly educated children who are adults, they get all their news primarily through their cell phone. Okay, we'll go ahead and take a call at this time. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Lee.
Yes, sir. What's your question for today?
My question is, we all know that the Republicans are trying to return everything back into the area of the 40s and the 50s. I say the 40s and the 50s because that's when most of the voter suppression throughout the land was very efficient. What we got to do now, in the 1960s, the voter registration and the Voter Act was enacted. And we cannot allow the Republicans to return us to the time of the 40s and the 50s, when the black man could not even register to vote. And a lot of people had lost their lives trying to get this process in effect. If we can just get all of the people to realize that history is beginning to repeat itself because of the bigotry that is being portrayed by the different states, we got to make sure you understand that this stuff will not go forward.
Well, that's an excellent point, Reverend William. One of the things that we have to do is community leaders like yourself. You got to get back there on the battle line again. You got to educate the kids. We used to have a good platform in our churches to talk to youth through Sunday school and things like that. But now, due to the pandemic, Reverend, what has happened is that we closed the churches for safety reason, and everything started going remotely. Then we saw this sharp increase in violent crime. So we have to start, one of the big things that we have to do is that we got to get our churches back to normal and get our churches more involved in this voter process. We need them more so now than ever before. We're in a battle for the soul of our country. When you see now they've arrested over 500 folks for trying to overthrow the federal government, and they based it on this false narrative that somehow the election was stolen from Donald Trump, although there was clear evidence that he became a wildly unpopular president for the majority of Americans. 53% of America didn't like him. So we got a guy who ran for president twice, and history shows that he had the most vote against him than anybody ever ran for office. He lost by the widest margin. In 2 presidential elections, he lost by 10.3 million votes. So the point is that if you can encourage people like yourself, we got to get these young folks back to church, get the church back open, and we got to start with our younger folks, the 18 to 30-year-old folks. They have to be more involved like you are. We got to go back to the old school stuff of educating our young folks, Mr. Williams. I think that's going to be critical. And I do agree with your assessment of the situation, and I thank you for your good comments.
Okay.
Okay, do we have another caller? Okay. Now, what the caller, Mr. William, that was some helpful insight. But let's go one step further. Before the pandemic, as part of my regimen, I went to Sunday church at the 8 o'clock service. Now, that was important to me because I thought that I got to give thanks to God, our creator, for all the good things that I've accomplished in life, my health, my family, and everything else. And it's just part of my routine every Sunday. And then I can get done with church about 9:15. And then after that, I have the rest of the day to go out and play golf and stuff like that. And so it was great. Well, the pandemic ended that, and we've not started that yet. And so now we have the 11 o'clock church service that I have to go to. That's a little bit more difficult for me because I got used to watching our church on the internet. Our pastor did a remarkable job of keeping us informed by having a podcast and things like that. But the in-person service that was inspirational, that became like a thing of the past. I'm happy to report that last week he announced that we're going back to, as soon as possible, the regular church service, because now the pandemic is largely under control. So at this time, we'll take another caller. Go ahead, caller. You have a question for us today.
Yes, I'm calling pertaining to my supplemental checks that I was getting from my job, and now they discontinued. I wondered if there were any way that I could that we could get together and see whether or not we can get this check back that it was called what's it called? 13th check.
You talking about the unemployment benefit check?
Yeah, was it a benefit check? Yeah.
Well, here's what happened.
Benefit check.
Well, here's what happened. The federal stimulus program last year allocated an additional $600 per week for unemployed. And they added everyone as an unemployed person. So even if you were a barber, beautician, you could have received unemployment benefit even though you were self-employed. Now, they approved this year $300 per week, and that's set to expire in September. Our governor, that a lot of people voted for, made an assessment that because there were so many job openings in Indiana, that he would terminate the supplemental payment. And when he terminated the supplemental payment, there was a lawsuit filed. the lawsuit that was filed, and Judge Hanley of Marion County Superior Court 11 determined that what the governor did was inappropriate. So the judge ordered a reinstatement of benefits. Now, after the judge ordered a reinstatement of benefits, the state decided to take an appeal. And so the case now is under appeal. And if the governor loses, you win. So you will get back-to-back benefit. If the governor wins his case, you lose and you won't get those benefits. And it's, so unfortunately, that's the way things are right now. And this was the governor that the majority of Indiana voted for, like 55%, I think, of the people in the state voted for this governor. And he decided that in order to get people back to work, they needed more motivation. And unfortunately, it's going to affect a guy like you that maybe need that extra $300 a week. And so stay tuned, and I'll update you on the litigation next week, and we'll take a look at it and see whether or not the briefs have been filed. Now look at the case and I'll give you an update on it. Okay, caller?
Sir, my name, that was my husband. Sir.
Yes.
You know, he don't. My name is Lavinia Brown, and this is a retirement check that I was receiving. So they stopped it. We always get a 13 check every year. So they discontinued the 13 check for this year. So I'm trying to find out are you the representative?
No. You talking about, was it like the education, like the teacher's pension fund check you're talking about?
No, sir. No, sir. I was working. I was working. I was employed at Western Electric, okay, long time ago. And I retired. And every year I get a 13 check. And this year they won't give we are not getting the 13 check. And I'm supposed to call my representative and senator. I'm supposed to get their name and try to help get my money. I need my money. My husband have Alzheimer's and I'm sick, and we don't get that much money. So I need my check, the 13 check.
Well, you could, your representative, Andre Carson, his office number, you got a pen?
Yes, sir, I do.
It's 202-226.
Wait a minute,
202-226. 7757.
7757?
Yes, ma'am. I think Andre Carson, you live in Congressional District 7, right? Andre Carson?
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you call his office? I'm not familiar with the Western Election pension fund, but there's a second thing you could do.
It's just the years that I worked. I worked for several different, companies, and when I retired, so now every year we get a 13 check. So this year they wouldn't give it to us. So they didn't give the 13 check. I can if you have time, I can read the letter that I got. So if that would help.
Well, I wouldn't want you to read on the air, but what you could do, I tell you what we could do for you. You can call my office on Monday afternoon at 317-631-5151.
317 what now?
631-5151. Call Monday after 2 o'clock and just simply say you were called from the radio station and I was expecting your call, because what we could do is that your corporation should have a benefit representative, but also when corporations make decisions like this, a lot of time they put it in their public announcement, and there may be some type of colored process that, but I'm not familiar with their pension protocol at this time, but it doesn't take long to figure this out, you know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you for calling. Okay, we'll take the next caller. Caller, you have a question or comment for us today?
Yes, Attorney Lee. What I want to talk to you about is this right here about the Voting Rights Act and stuff like that. Our young people, most of our young people don't know nothing about civics. They don't know nothing about our Constitution of the United States. And that's where we're liking it in that era right there. It looks like to me that somebody that in the Democrat Party, I mean, I tell the young people about the government and the Constitution as much as I can. But it's going to take somebody with a platform to really get to them and to let them know, because nothing leaves nothing. I mean, if you don't know nothing, you don't know which way to vote and don't know how to vote. So, and a lot of our grown people, all older people don't know the function of your government either. And that's where our problem been for a long time in the Black community. Thank you, sir.
Well, Carl, you raised a litany of issues, but here's one of our problems. Our young folks, they're exposed to so many form of communication. They have Twitter, they have Facebook, they have TikTok. So they're consumed with social media outlets. And so many of them, they obtain their news through these social media feeds. And a lot of times, particularly during the presidential election, they receive distorted information. During the presidential election between Trump and Hillary Clinton, the social media gave all kind of false information. It was fundamentally flawed. Like, for example, they even had the conspiracy theory that there was somehow she was housing girls in DC, let these people to raid a restaurant. I mean, just crazy stuff. So our kids are not getting information by choice. And so as parents, what we have to do is that we have to educate our kids at home as to paying attention to news feed, read a newspaper every now and then. So they need to get news and become more aware of what's going on around them. Instead, so many kids are spending an extraordinary amount of time on the social media outlet. And when I have these kids come to my office, I go on Facebook or their social media, and it's just astounding to me the amount of information that they put out there about themselves. They put their whole life on the internet. And so a lot of the confusion and confrontation among these kids emanates from the internet. So the point I'm making is, it's incumbent upon the parents to spend time with their children to educate them. We can't rely solely on our school system. We have to start at home to make our kids more aware, to be conscious of these political issues that affect their lives every day. Now, at this time, we take a short commercial break. Our number is 317-239-1310. Now, back to our YouTube folks. One of the things that we're dealing with on a daily basis is that we now see that we have a dramatic increase in violent crime and homicides. Every day when I wake up, either in our city or Chicago or someplace, I see there's just shooting. We have our teenagers or young adults shooting and killing each other. And that's disturbing to me. And I think that as parents, we have to take more responsibility in dealing with our own kids. We can't simply allow for our educational institution to be the sole source of teaching our kids how to behave, how to govern themselves. And the other thing that bothers me is that I'm trying to figure out, how do so many young folks acquire weapons? It's just mind-boggling to me. I would think that if I had a 15-year-old teenager who was trying to get a gun, I would somehow figure out that they had a gun. I just don't understand how parents can have so little communication with their children that they become completely unaware of when they are traveling a path that they should not be traveling. So I think that what we have to rely on is just good old-fashioned good parenting. And one of the things too that I'm confronted with, we have so many households that are run by a single parent. I recognize that. But some of the greatest individuals in history have come from single parent households. So that cannot be an excuse to management of children. It's an impediment, but don't let that be a handicap, because it only takes one positive person to have a positive effect on children. I know that I've had dozens of parents, for example, they come to the law firm and their kids may be struggling in math or some science course. And I could just give them study guides to show them how the kids can improve. Now, the reason that's important is if kids don't achieve a certain modicum of success in their school environment, then they're more likely to drop out. Kids that are academically successful, they that do better, they tend to graduate at a higher number. It's a pretty simple equation. So if the kids are struggling, seek help to help them get past the struggling situation they're dealing with. As a parent, you owe that to the kids to try to have them move forward in their educational pursuit. And the way you do that is very simple. You sit down with them. If you can't help them, seek professional help. There's educational modicum where you could seek help. There's things in place, whereby you can get assistance. I remember when my kids were in high school here in Indiana, there was a math program offered by the university in Terre Haute. It's an engineering school, and they were offering tutoring over the internet in calculus and these mathematical subjects. It's called Rose Holman in Terre Haute. And I said, this is great. So, your kids are taking advanced math courses, Algebra 2, calculus, and trigonometry and courses like that. They can go and watch these students on the internet discuss this. And I thought that was so important. And so what the parents should do is seek out professional help. In our situation, how fortunate, we had in my household, I had older sisters and siblings that were really bright, and they finished first and second in their graduation class. And so I always had the ability within my household, if I needed help, it was right in my home. But fortunately, I didn't need help because I was fortunate to be a very good student. But if I did need help, I had the brightest sisters that I could ever talk to. They were the smartest people in their class at their school. And so, but if I didn't have that, I still had the ability to get tutoring, even during that time period. So we'll go back to the line. We'll take a caller now, producer. Caller, you have a question for us today?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I got 2 quick points. You bring up 2 great points, evident. When the pandemic first hit, especially here, they hid the numbers of the deaths. And I still think it's higher than what you say it was, because they had nurses going that had COVID, and these people died from that, and we're not talking about that. And I think people should be held responsible. And
Hey, Cole, I lost your voice. Are you still there? Hello? Okay, we lost a caller, but he made a good point, and we'll wait for him to call back. But in essence, what he was pointing out is that when this process started, there was a massive amount of people that were dying in nursing homes. And I submit, just based upon the calls that we got through our office in case we reviewed, there was a lot more people died at nursing home and places like that that were not reported at COVID death, but died because of COVID. Like, for example, when people needed assistance, say that they were partially paralyzed. Well, there were so many aides that weren't come to work. We lost staffing, and because of shortage, we're not able to receive the care that they should have received. And because of this, the nursing homes sought federal protection and legislation to immune them from lawsuits. Even today, a lot of the employers are facing the same problem. You know, everywhere I go, there's health warning signs. And at the same time, we still have a large number of people who can't get employment. But what has happened is our economy is going toward a technology-based economy. So folks that are in the technical fields, there are more jobs than people. In the service field, right now, there's a need, but the problem with the service field is that the pay is so low until many people can't afford to live at those wages. See, even though that they were attempting to increase the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, the $15 an hour minimum wage equates to $600 per week. So you pay taxes and costs, you take home about $425, $450. Well, if you had childcare and you pay $150 a week for childcare to send your kid to childcare, then you're down to $300 a week. Well, you have to have a car payment, rent, food. And so the point is that the typical person wouldn't be able to survive and with a child with $15 an hour minimum wage. Ironically, both our senators oppose increase to the federal minimum wage. It's just astounding to me. And so at the same time, we're trying to reduce the unemployment benefit. And I think that there need to be a greater appreciation of the fact that when people have children, that the cost of childcare is so great for many households that it's just simply not affordable to work. And so we'll go back to our caller again. I think he's back on the line. Caller, go ahead and finish your question, Pierre.
This is Pierre. Good morning, Dave. Real quickly, I was reading in the paper today, Beach Grove wants to merge its fire department with Indianapolis, and we're going to take over the fire duties for Beach Grove. And I was just wondering, how many of those small satellite cities benefit from Indianapolis services, you know, even though they might have their own fire and police? How do they benefit from Indianapolis kind of free of cost?
Well, that's a good question. Let's start with how this got started. when this process started, the case went to U.S. Supreme Court, and the city used to be a Republican city, and they decided to adopt this platform called Unigov. Well, when they did that, it gave the folks in all the contiguous cities in Marion County the right to vote for the mayor of Indianapolis. But you as a citizen, you can't vote for the mayor of Beech Grove, Speedway, Lawrence, or any of these cities. And so they get to vote for two mayors, you get to vote for one. So the way the system was set up, it was, from my standpoint, it was designed to deprive the African-American voters who were largely consisted in the Center Township area a fair and accurate representation. So what has happened over the years, people have migrated to the urban population or the inner cities for a better life. The city affords you conveniences such as restaurants, entertainment provision, grocery stores, and those things. The quality of life for many people, appear to be better in the urban setting. Because of that, we've had an increase in the minority population, and now the county is about 7% Democrat. Well, the city of Indianapolis, when I do litigation, there were over 20 police agencies in Marion County, over 20. And you don't realize that until you get involved in a lawsuit. And I can't remember whether it was 22, 23, 24, but it was a shocking number of police agencies. So they do benefit, because if something were to occur and their fire department could not handle it, the fire department of Indianapolis would assist. But they have their own police departments in these cities, and they get state, federal, local funding to fund them. And even in our township, for example, like in Pike Township, we have a model fire department. We got one of the best in the country right here. We have really phenomenal equipment and facilities. And so I like our fire department. And they've opted so far to stay out of the Indianapolis Fire Department. So yes, they do get benefits, but they have their own autonomous government. They have their own budget, and they have their own tax base. Now, next caller, please.
Hello?
Hello, Guy. You have a question or comment for us today?
Can you hear me, Nick?
Yes, sir.
Well, first, I'd like to give you kudos for having such a program on a regular basis and getting information out to the public. I think that some of the things that you mentioned contribute to the fact that many people have lost faith in the government and leadership in general, because every time you have a situation where they are really betrayed in terms of the property taxes, other things in terms of needed support, this erodes their faith in the government. And that drips down to things like when the government makes a recommendation, how many people are going to follow that recommendation, because in other things they've lost faith in the government and in leadership. So I think that government and leadership have a responsibility to do the right thing in terms of the movie that Spike Lee made. If you don't, then you run into all kinds of problems. And that's where we are today. What do you think about that?
Well, I thank you for your comment, Guy. And I agree that the government has an important role in society. One of the, in our last couple of minutes, a quick commentary, one of the big election campaign slogan in South Florida was that the Biden administration would become socialist. And so a lot of the minority folks in Miami who are from countries such as Cuba, they did not want to become part of a socialist regime. And I don't think that most people really understood what democracy is all about. The government has a duty to protect, the government has a duty to serve and act in the best interest of the citizens of that country. When the pandemic occurred, we saw the government step in and provide financial relief. We saw the federal government give every American who filed a tax return, who didn't make a certain amount of money, a check. Now, before that occurred, the political dialogue, a diatribe said that this was socialism. But I ask you, how many of those people in Miami who was claiming socialism, when they received their government check, tore it up or sent it back? We see tragedies unfold. We saw, and I'm saddened by the fact that we had a tower down in Miami to collapse, and we have all these people are dying. So sad. But we see the government immediately come to rescue to try to save every life they can. That's what government is all about, helping people through crisis. And so the government does have a role, and you have a responsibility as a citizen to participate. So every day, as a citizen, do the following. One, make sure that all your friends and family get vaccinated as quickly as possible. Two, start educating every young folks that you know to vote. And that's my commentary for this week. Now, next week, we're going to deal with some other issues. We have Vanita Banks back. We're going to talk about cybersecurity and this threat. And we're going to get a follow-up from our distinguished panel from LA. So thank you for tuning in for all our folks. And I also apologize for the technical glitches that we experienced today. We fixed them, but we did have a technical flaw at the beginning. But thank you for staying tuned, and God bless and keep you until we talk next week. Thank you, and have a blessed day.